Revelation 20:7-8. When the thousands are accomplished, Satan will be released from his prison, and he will go out to seduce the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, GOG and MAGOG, in order to bring them together for the war. 2. The millennial context, reign of peace and divine order. Before this final battle, Christ reigns for 1,000 years, the millennium, a symbolic or literal period according to the interpretations, during which Satan is chained. This is a time of spiritual restoration where believers will reign with Christ. 3. GOG and MAGOG, symbols of the global rebellion. In the Apocalypse, GOG and MAGOG no longer designate two specific peoples, as in Ezekiel 38-39, but represent all the rebel nations in the four corners of the earth. This universal designation indicates a global uprising against God. GOG can be perceived as the head of this rebellion. MAGOG represents the deceived multitudes. They are summoned by Satan for a last assault against the camp of the saints and the beloved city. Apocalypse 20:9. That is to say, the people of God. 4. Satan's strategy, seduction and gathering of nations. Despite the 1,000 years of peace, the human heart remains subject to corruption. Satan, released for a short time, acts as a final test. It appeals to nations, proving that justice cannot be imposed from the outside, but must be rooted in the inner transformation. 5. Immediate defeat, divine fire and eternal judgment. The text is clear, there is no real war. Before they even attack, the fire descends from the sky and consumes them. Apocalypse 29. It is a final demonstration of divine power against any form of rebellion. Revelation 20:10. And the devil was thrown into the pond of fire and sulfur. This marks the final end of evil. Satan, the beast, and the false prophet are thrown into the fire pond. The last judgment can then begin. 6. GOG and MAGOG as spiritual egregores. These are collective entities representing the energies of opposition, pride, rebellion, and illusion. The opposition to divine light. They illustrate the last resistances to light before the establishment of a pure kingdom. 7. Prophetic and spiritual application. This passage reminds us that even after seasons of glory, the human heart needs constant spiritual vigilance. The spiritual history of humanity does not end with the millennium, but with the final victory of God on any form of opposition. Chapter 5. Theological and Spiritual Interpretations. 1. Jewish, Christian, and Islamic point of view has. Jewish vision, Tanakh and rabbinical tradition. In Judaism, GOG and MAGOG appear mainly in Ezekiel 38-39, where GOG, prince of Magog, embodies the coalition forces against Israel at the end of time. Rabbinical interpretation. Some currents see in GOG and MAGOG the nations of evil, symbols of chaos opposed to the divine order. Messianic waiting. This eschatological war is often perceived as preceding the arrival of the Messiah, marking the redemption of Israel. B. Christian vision. In Christianity, the main reference is in Apocalypse 20:7-10, where GOG and MAGOG are released by Satan after the 1,000 years of reign of Christ. Allegory of ultimate evil. They embody the last forces of rebellion against God. Eschatological perspective. Their defeat marks the final end of evil before the last judgment. 2. Allegorical, historical, and prophetic interpretations has. Allegorical interpretation. Forces of disorder. GOG and MAGOG represent the powers hostile to the divine will, corrupt human systems, impious ideologies. Inner fight. Some mystics read them as interior figures, impulses, passions, or spiritual darkness to fight. B. Historical interpretation. Geopolitical identifications. Over the course of history, GOG and MAGOG were associated with real peoples. Scythians, Mongols, Huns, Russians, etc. Contextual reading. Ezekiel written in a post-expand context, where geopolitical tensions feed the vision of a final conflict. C. Prophetic interpretation. Key of the end of time, they are perceived as a reality to come, a global military rally against the people of God. Spiritual preparation. Believers are called to vigilance, holiness, and prayer to deal with these troubled times. 3. GOG and MAGOG as archetypes of the enemies of God. Universal symbols of evil. GOG and MAGOG go beyond their geographic identity to become spiritual archetypes, evil organized rebellion against God. Eschatological figures. Their presence marks a cycle, birth, fall, catering. God always triumphs at the end. Appeal to faith. As an archetypes, they reveal the existence of a constant spiritual fight where God calls his people to fidelity. Chapter 6. The Nations of Gog and Magog in the Modern World. 1. Geographic Hypotheses. Russia, China, Iran. For centuries, exegetes and biblical researchers have been trying to identify the territories corresponding to Gog and Magog, mentioned in Ezekiel 38-39 and Apocalypse 20:7-9. Several geographic hypotheses are advanced. Russia, one of the oldest hypotheses, situates Magog in northern steppes beyond the Caucasus. The terms Prince of Rosh, Ezekiel 38:2, according to certain translations, led some to identify Gog as a chief coming from Rosh, interpreted as Russia. This theory was widely popularized during the Cold War. China. Due to its growing military power, some analysts see China as a potential player in the eschatological scenarios of coalition against Israel. However, biblical texts do not explicitly mention peoples of the Far East in connection with Gog and Magog. Iran. Persian. Ezekiel 38:5 mentions Persia, a biblical ancestor of current Iran, as an ally of Gog. Its current hostility towards Israel and its strategic positioning in the Muslim world strengthen this association. Turkey, Caucasus, and Central Asia. The peoples of Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, and Togarmah, Ezekiel 38:2-6, are sometimes linked to regions of current Turkey and Central Asia. Some scholars believe that GOG could be a pan-Islamic leader bringing together nations against Israel. 2. Contemporary prophetic readings. In contemporary prophetic tradition, several spiritual voices see Gog and Magog not only as physical nations, but also as spiritual and ideological powers. Gog is a symbol of final rebellion against God. In Revelation 27-9, Gog and Magog appear after the millennium as agents of the last global insurrection against the kingdom of God. This passage widens the scope of their meaning. These are less states than all nations seduced by Satan. The shock of civilizations. Some prophets perceive current tensions, geopolitical, cultural, technological, such as the beginnings of the final confrontation. They speak of an anti-Christical global system that will bring together Gog and Magog around anti-Dio values, idolatry, transhumanism, absolute control, etc. Israel at the center of prophecies. Whatever the interpretation, the Bible still places Israel at the heart of the final scene. Prophetical readings insist on vigilance, prayer, and the preparation of the people of God in the face of the alliances that are formed. 3. Complex drifts to avoid. The study of prophecies must be done with discernment so as not to fall into fear, confusion, or extremism. Avoid the too rigid identification of modern nations. Ancient names should not be used to demonize whole peoples. Biblical symbolism often goes beyond simple geography. Rejection of the spirit of panic or hatred. Prophetic interpretation should not nourish xenophobia or the spirit of war. Christ calls for love, even towards enemies. Matthew 5:44. Denunciation of baseless theories. Many theories on Gog and Magog rely on extra-biblical, political, or esoteric readings. You have to focus on writing, guided by the mind. The balance between spiritual watch and confident faith. The Christian is not called to live in the fear of the prophecies, but in the hope of Christ's victory. Gog and Magog will finish consumed by celestial fire. Apocalypse 20:9. Chapter 7. Spiritual meaning of Gog and Magog. 1. A prophetic and mysterious figure. Gog and Magog appear in scriptures as enigmatic entities, often associated with the last times, with the ultimate war against God and his people. Their name evokes a global tumult, a large-scale rebellion against the divine order. This chapter explores their spiritual and prophetic scope. 2. Symbols of chaos, rebellion, and Antichrist. Figure of a charismatic, proud leader, motivated by the spirit of domination, carrying the spirit of war and illusion. Magog, nation under influence, representatives of a fallen humanity, subject to the power of darkness. Antichrist. Gog is often interpreted as a prefiguration or an emanation of the Antichrist, the final enemy of Christ, opposed to any spiritual truth. Spiritual chaos. Gog and Magog embody confusion, deceptive doctrines, and total rebellion with divine laws. Key verse. And when the 1,000 years are accomplished, Satan will be released from his prison, and he will come out to seduce the nations which are in the four corners of the earth. Gog and Magog. Revelation 20:7-8. 3. The fight of light against darkness. A cosmic battle. Gog and Magog not represent only a terrestrial war, but a celestial confrontation between divine light and dark forces. The spiritual armies. God arouses his elected officials, his angels and his prophets as warriors of light in the face of increasing rebellion. The challenge: God's sovereignty on earth. GOG and MAGOG want to dethrone God by sowing doubt, division, fear, and idolatry. T-verse: You will go up against my people of Israel like a cloud to cover the country. It will be in the last days. Ezekiel 38 verse 16. 4. The last test of the faith of the saints. The final sieve, before the eternal reign. The saints will be experienced in their loyalty, their perseverance, and their obedience.